Travellers to the northern Thai town of Chiang Mai should not miss the opportunity to visit Wat Umong Temple. Not only is it a beautiful example of a forest temple, it is also unique in Thailand for having tunnels intentionally built as a place for Buddhist prayer and meditation. The Thai word Umong means tunnel, so the name Wat Umong literally means tunnel temple. Wat Umong is hidden in a tranquil wooded area under the shadow of Doi Suthe mountain on the west side of town. This location keeps the temple grounds relatively cool and shady in the morning and late afternoon. In addition to the famous tunnels, the grounds also include a striking statue of the fasting Buddha, and a lake with a small island connected by a footbridge, where you can feed the fish and birds. A mysterious garden full of old pieces of Buddha statues, and of course the huge jedi or stupa that once contained relics of the Buddha. Like other forest temples, there's a quiet and secluded feeling to the place, and even though it is an important tourist attraction, it is never as crowded as the other major temples, so it is easy to find a solitary moment to appreciate the spirituality of its mystic atmosphere. According to legend, Wat Umong was built 700 years ago, around the year 1300, in the era of King Mangrai, the first king of the northern Thai kingdom of Lanna. At that time, the name of the temple was Wat Welu Gatharam, meaning 11 clumps of bamboo, which tells us just how little was there beforehand. King Mangrai conquered some of the smaller city kingdoms to bring them under a single rule, and skillfully negotiated alliances with several larger neighbouring kingdoms, including with King Ramkhamhaeng of the central Thai kingdom of Sukhothai. Through his friendly relations with King Ramkhamhaeng, himself a strong advocate of Theravada Buddhism, King Mangrai invited several of the most learned monks to come up to the north and establish temples and teaching centres around the Lanna kingdom, especially here in Chiang Mai. Theravada Buddhism originates from Sri Lanka, and this cultural connection is why the Chedi at Wat Umong is built in the Sri Lankan style. According to palm leaf scriptures, it was some 100 years later, probably around 1380, that the sixth king of Lanna, King Guna, built the tunnels as a meditation chamber for his favourite monk, Pratmaha Therajan, whose name Jan means moon. During this time, the temple name was changed to Wat Umong, or even Wat Umong Therajan, in honour of this most important monk. There were a number of Burmese-Siamese wars during the 1500s, in which Burmese forces invaded Thai territory. After that period, Chiang Mai declined in importance, and people gradually migrated away from the area. It is known that by 1660 Wat Umong had been abandoned entirely and left to fall into ruin, and the wild jungle embraced it back to nature. Indeed, this decline was so profound that even the great city of Chiang Mai itself was abandoned to the jungle during the late 1700s. After being forgotten for almost 300 years, Wat Umong was rediscovered in 1947 by Jiao Chun Sirarot. The jungle was cut back and repairs done to bring the temple back to life. Apparently, the accumulated forest debris and soil covering the temple and filling the tunnels was up to 1 meter deep in places. Workmen had to use shovels and axes to cut and dig it all away. Hundreds of years of seeping damp had completely covered the tunnel murals in layers of accumulated limescale, so the workmen were not aware of the accidental damage they caused as they dug the tunnels out. By 1949, the temple was back in use, and the new head monk, Bhikkhu Panyananta, renamed it Wat Umong Suan Puttatham, meaning Garden of Dharma, where Dharma is the Buddhist concept of moral law and virtue. It was not until modern times that serious work on studying and restoring the murals started. This effort was primarily due to the dedication and passion of Ajahn Dr. Surachai Jongchit Ngam, who started studying the murals by himself in 1995 and brought attention to the need to conserve these precious and historic artifacts. Then in the year 2000, the Fine Arts Department of Thailand funded a project to restore the murals. The relic chamber, or kru, deep inside the jetty, was robbed of all its treasures during the reign of King Rama V in the latter part of the 1800s. However, it was still possible to see the faint remains of 28 Buddha images on the walls of the chamber, in keeping with Buddhist tradition. Unfortunately, the murals in the relic chamber faded quickly, and in 2003 the Fine Arts Department of Thailand decided to seal up the chamber. It is no longer possible for the public to enter. In 2004, the Ford Motor Company provided funding for another round of restoration effort led by Dr. Surachai, and this time significant progress was made in sketching the details of the murals that had been uncovered so far, allowing deeper study of the artistic technique and influences. Restoring the murals requires great care and takes time. The method involves placing tissue paper soaked in an ammonia solution on the wall and leaving it until the ammonia has reacted with the calcium carbonate in the limescale to soften it. After that, a scalpel and a steady hand is needed to painstakingly scrape away the softened limescale until the detail of the original murals is revealed. Dr. Surachai now works as a lecturer or Ajahn at the Faculty of Fine Arts of Chiang Mai University. In 2007 he formed the Archaeological Mathematics and Science Research Laboratory along with a chemist, Ajahn Dr. Sirawan Kettapun, and a mathematician, Ajahn Aticahart Kettapun, all under the aegis of the Faculty of Science. This research unit continues to work part-time on restoring the murals and studying all other aspects of Wat Umong's construction and history. Many interesting things have been discovered by these researchers. For example, it was found that none of the walls, tunnels, or other buildings in the temple area follow neat perpendicular lines. At the time it was built, people measured things using the span of their hands, forearms, or both arms outstretched. Of course, these units are slightly different, depending on who is doing the measuring. Also, it was found that infrared light can show up details of the murals that are much harder to see with the naked eye, without necessarily removing the limescale completely. By piecing together and comparing the small patches of mural that have been revealed so far, the researchers were able to deduce the missing parts and build a computer reconstruction of what the pattern in the long central tunnel must have looked like at the peak of its glory. Here we can see the lotus flower motif repeated between clouds, each part similar but also unique in its finer details, due to having been hand-painted. It is noteworthy that the murals did not depict the life of the Buddha like every other temple in Thailand. Instead, they are a wallpaper-like repeating pattern of flowers, ribbons, clouds and birds. So here we are inside the rather low-ceilinged bird tunnel, where the motif here is peony flowers and some lotuses, of course, but mainly several types of birds. Right here, for example, we have something that looks to me like an egret with its long neck and a narrow bill. And over here, there's another one that has the colouring of an ibis, probably a sacred ibis. And then a bit further on, we have what is quite clearly a parrot with its hooked bill. Also, the stylistic element of the paintings were clearly influenced by Chinese art of that era. These cloud designs and swirls match those on contemporary Chinese art, as do these birds and flowers. An X-ray spectrometer was used to identify the chemical composition of the pigments. The green colour is from a mineral of copper called malachite, and the red is from cinnabar, a red form of mercury oxide that was very expensive in those days. The cinnabar would have had to have been imported from China at even greater cost. Quite likely, a Chinese artisan would have been employed either to paint the murals or to direct others in how to do it. It is safe to conclude that King Guna spared no expense in preparing the tunnels for his favourite monk, Therajan. This was a lavish royal temple for an extremely important monk. It's really very fascinating to consider that the murals here have lain hidden underneath the limescale for at least 300 or 400 years. It's almost like a time machine, looking back to see how people perceived the world and their art and culture of the time. We would like to thank Ajahn Aticahart Kettapun from Chiang Mai University for his kind assistance in providing information used in the making of this video. Any errors or omissions are certainly ours, not his.